We missed. Did you miss the dwarves? I didn't.
I didn't. Oh, but I would like to say something.
Okay.
I
All right.
am watching videos.
Oh no.
I'm watching videos from a guy.
Oh no.
He does not know what he's talking about. Okay, he's not like an actual person that seriously studied Tolkien and whatever.
Okay.
But
Does he say that?
he is yes, he did say that.
Oh, okay.
He's not one of those, but he's reading the Silmarillion and explaining it through like animated pictures to like
Okay.
explain it in a quote unquote easy way. And I'm watching it, so
Oh no.
it's not. I'm not really like 100%, but I do remember a few things. So I found out why the dwarves were made, and that was kind of cute. Like the I don't remember names. I don't remember anything, but like they were supposed to be like elves, but they are not, because one of the kids of the god of this world that I forget the name of, Iluvatar. Anyway, they were like supposed to be created to be like elves, but the person who made them didn't know what he was doing, but he wanted to make something good. And so that's why they were not like wiped away like humans and other shit. If I'm saying random and not real shit, stop me. But I'm consulting you because you know better.
Yeah.
And I thought that was cute. Like they remained in the end, even though they're like deformed and not really good looking, because the creation of them came from a good place, and that was like cute.
I'm highly suspicious of a person that didn't read the books and is trying to make.
No, he did read the books. He just didn't study them. And as he's reading the books, he's making the videos about it. I'm really coming into it
Yeah.
knowing nothing at all but for what you tell me.
Right.
So
Right.
I was like, maybe I have to do a little bit of that to try and understand it a bit more. Yeah.
I'm very wary of secondhand information. I believe in trying to go to the original source of things. So like one thing is to listen to some of these people like myself, I guess, that have spent a lot of time with it. And another thing is to have somebody who's like reading it for the first time, and that's your exposure to it. I'm wary of that.
Right.
You know, it's the same thing. It's the same thing even with like ancient literature, like what I was telling you before, where I'm wary of translations of things because things change in translation. So,
Right.
about
It's
the
a second
dwarves,
account. It's not.
yeah, the interesting thing about the dwarves, for me anyway, is that they are like the first. If you want to think about it, they are like the first androids in a mythological sense, because like
Yeah.
they weren't supposed to be made, and they really can't be made. So I think on several things, on one level Tolkien was struggling with the fact that he didn't really know how to fit them into the world, because they weren't really the main focus of what he was trying to do. So he needed to come up with an origin story, and so he came up with this, because it's weird that you have a creation myth where everything fits together, like the way the humans come in fits, kind of the way the elves come into it, like all of it is. And then but then you say, well, the dwarfs weren't supposed to be there, but this god Aula wanted to make them.
Aula, yes.
And the reason Aula made them is because he's the god of like smithing, you know, and all of that, and
Yeah.
that's what they're primarily about. So, but it's interesting because they're like basically golems. So you could almost say it's kind of like the question of androids. Like, are they living? Are they really living? And then on top of that, also is the first time in all of his writing that he also introduces the concept of resurrection. The first king of the dwarves is always named Durin, by the way, which I think you've seen it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like during the
Yeah, because there's during the 1200,000th.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
right.
There's
So
so
he
many. And
basically
he reincarnates as well,
yes, right.
right?
So he basically dies and then reincarnates and then dies and then reincarnate, kind of like the Mavuika concept. So that's another that's the only
Yeah.
time in Tolkien's work that resurrection in that concept is really introduced in the lore canon with the dwarfs,
Mhm.
and with the dwarfs only, really. There was another issue with an elf where Glorfindel, which I wish they would bring him here, but I'm not even sure. Yeah, he should be available because Glorfindel makes a very brief appearance in Lord of the Rings. Very brief, sadly, but he's also in the Silmarillion. So kind of like Galadriel, like he's been around forever. It would be cool to see him because there was a question about Glorfindel. Did he die? You know what I mean? And was reborn, and he
Ooh.
kind of skirted around that concept of that there too. Um, anyway, that's what I find interesting about the dwarves. It's kind of weird that he didn't really, unlike everybody else, he didn't really have an. They weren't organically placed because it doesn't make sense that he came up with that whole thing of like, well, they weren't supposed to be there. Well, then what are you saying? Because that's actually a very non-Christian way of looking at it. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
where I'm not really
Yeah.
sure where Tolkien really lied or what he was. Well, I mean, I have my own theories about that, but it's a very if he's trying to do a Christian story in a mythology, he fails there because it doesn't make sense. How do you that you're saying God didn't know or God didn't have that in plan? That wouldn't make sense. Unless you're trying to say that it like with the orcs, it makes sense because it's like they were elves, but then they were corrupted, so they were an original creation that was corrupted. Corruption makes sense because that's what the whole evil satanic aspect of Middle Earth comes into play. A
Right.
big part of his theme is decay and corruption that is in the earth, and it's in the earth because of what Morgoth did. But then you have these dwarves that pop out of nowhere. They weren't supposed to be there. So what are they? I've come to the conclusion that they're kind of like, it sounds weird to say it, but they're kind of like his answer to what an android would be in the sense of like, are they alive? Are they not alive? Clearly they're alive. They move in the sense of like alive that they move. But what is living, right? What constitute a living being? Is it our consciousness? Is it our heart? Is it our soul? And technically, the dwarves
That's
don't really have a
why I
soul,
was
if you think about it.
yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier with homunculuses. That's what I think they are. They're artificial life that was created
Right,
and in the image of the person that created them,
right.
because yes, they don't look exactly the same, but they have the same likes, if you want to simplify it like that. Like, he's the god of
Yeah,
smithing,
yeah,
so they deal with rocks and
right,
smithing and
right.
caves and stuff.
And he didn't really address procreation. Like the
Yeah,
women are supposed to have beards too, or whatever. Like, so it feels like really more like they're just duplicating, especially the whole Durin thing. Like the fact that Durin is just a reincarnation of himself. It really feels like they're robots that rein. So I mean, whether that's what he was getting at, whether that's a way that he got around it, it's an interesting question. But
yeah.
we can only speculate on it. But I see him kind of that way.
Also, elves technically reincarnate, right?
No,
Like,
no,
no, okay.
they
Again,
don't.
this is why I ask. Uh, they die rarely, but they can die, right? For grief and for
Right,
being killed.
right.
And they go somewhere
Yes,
that I forget the name of,
right. The the
and
the,
then they
the
can be
Hall of
brought
Man. They go
back.
to the Hall of Mandos and they stay there forever.
Right,
They
okay.
stay there forever until the end of time.
Okay.
Yep. Which also is kind of like
And,
it's
but,
kind of also like the Greek philosophy, the Greek mythology of going to the underworld, right? I forgot what they call it, right?
right, right, yeah, it's basically just saying there's this secondary place for when you die.
Right,
It's that you're still there, but you're confined there.
right.
But like I
That's a
remember.
good word. The word confined is important because that was another aspect of it. The elves are confined to Middle Earth, but
Oh,
humans are not. And I think that's where he
okay.
tried to bring spirituality into it, but it was also again unclear from the way he does it, where he tries to be like elves are just like the dwarves are, like we said, the dwarves are connected to the god of smithing and mountains and rocks. The elves are
Mm-hmm.
connected to the world of nature. You know what I mean? To the world of
Yeah.
trees and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
nature, the nature that is out there, which is what the earth is, right? The planet, the Middle Earth. And so they
Yes.
are also kind of, you could say, like the way dwarves are maybe automatons or homunculi, the elves are like elementals that are connected to the energy
Right,
of the
yeah.
earth. And so they stay with the earth no matter what, whether they are alive and they're above ground or they die and they go to the Hall of Mandos, which is like an underground cave, like an Enkanomia or a Night Kingdom type of situation. But humans are not like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't really elaborate then on, like, he just says that elves are confined to Middle Earth, like you just said. Humans are not. And but he doesn't elaborate in the sense that the insinuation is obviously that
We
we go to we leave Earth and we go to heaven or we go to God, whatever that's going to be. But he doesn't really elaborate on that in the actual story.
right. He just says you die. Like death is more of a thing for humans, but it's not like they're going places. It's vague.
Right. Well, the insinuation is that they leave Earth. They leave they we leave Earth and we go to Iluvatar. Maybe he doesn't really say, but that's he's leaving it open to Christianity, to the concept of we go to heaven. We don't stay here. We
Right.
go back to heaven. Heaven meaning, the one God, the source, blah blah blah. But the elves
Mm-hmm.
stay here in Earth. They're tied to the physicality and of the and the elemental energy of the Earth. And when it dies, they go with it. Kind of a deal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very abstract, so
Yeah.
it's a little difficult to grasp sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's super interesting.
And just like in the Bible, there's a lot of numerology in Tolkien's work. For example,
Oh.
we have the rings. There's the one ring, then there's the three rings for elves, there's the seven rings for dwarves, and there's nine rings for men. So numerology plays a factor. And just like there's seven dwarves, why is there seven rings for the dwarves? Because the original dwarves were seven. The first dwarves were
Oh.
seven dwarves basically. And it's kind of like, I mean,
Okay.
honestly, there's even kind of a correlation there with the whole tribes of Israel. Even though the tribes of Israel was supposed to be 12, the dwarves were kind of seven tribes as well. There's seven forefathers of the dwarves, and the ones that we really care about because they're still in the story of Middle Earth is Durin's line. But Durin's line is just one line of the seven. There's six other forefathers of the dwarves that uh, head their own tribes of dwarves, and he mentions them, but he doesn't go too deep into them. We only really follow Durin's line.
Oh, okay.
So there's opportunity
Interesting
there
also.
yeah, there's opportunity there. Just like the only thing that I'm curious about in the Gandalf story and all this is why is he going to Rune? I want to know why he's going there. Is he going there because the original lake where the elves awoke is there, or is he which was called Queen Yevon, or is he going there because the other two wizards, the blue wizards, are there that we never really got to see in the actual writing? He never, got.
Oh.
That's yeah, because that would be interesting. And same thing would be interesting to know where the other six dwarves tribes are. I'm calling them tribes. I don't know if the rest, if it's tribe, clans, whatever, but that's kind of how they are.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway,